everybody. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jason Grady. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Inland and Wetlands Commission of Monroe. Today is April the 10th. It is currently 7:03. The first order of business, as always, is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll introduce the members of the commission present at the moment. Starting all the way on my right is Commissioner Clark Gingras. Is it Gingras? Sorry. It's fine. Next, Ross Mastroraco. Next is Commissioner Jim Stewart, who is our treasurer. He's also a professional engineer and a licensed land surveyor. To my left is our vice chairman, Jeff Shamus, who is a certified ecologist, a certified soil scientist, and a professional wetland scientist. To his left is our secretary, Lois Spence. Next to her is Donna Shazinski, who is our
office manager. Next is Scott Schatzenline, who is a licensed professional engineer and our town engineer, and also our inland wetland agent. Also with us today is our recording secretary, Sarah Stroud. Before we start, I'll read our mission statement. The objective and purpose of the Inland and Wetlands Commission is to provide for the overall protection and preservation of the inland, wetlands, and watercourses within the town of Monroe. In the normal course of our meetings, we will hear public hearings and other applications. The protocol for public hearings is to have the applicant make a representation or presentation to the commission, during which and after which the commission will be asking the applicant questions. The commission will then review town, staff, and other independent comments. The meeting will be then opened up for public comment. I will ask that all comments be made to the chair or the commission. After any and all comments pro, in opposition, or of a general nature are made, the applicant will be given the opportunity to respond. It is not necessary that the applicant respond, but generally in their best interest to do so. There will be no further opportunity for new questions unless new material is entered in as evidence or testimony during their response. Please keep any and all comments pro and con specific to inland and wetlands related matters. Other applications that do not involve public hearing will follow a similar format, with the exception that there will be no public comments allowed. The meeting follows our published agenda unless otherwise amended. The agenda is up here on our front table, so anybody like a copy. Are there any changes to our agenda for this evening? No.
Actually, I do have one.
Of course.
That I didn't tell her about. If I can find it. Under 10B, I want to add, under the general permit for public works, Todd Drive culvert temporary repairs.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, moving on. There is no subdivision report or recommendation to P&Z tonight. There is one regulated activity, which is a public hearing. IWC 2019-02, 11 Glen Hollow Drive, Ventura, second floor addition, new garage, driveway modification, and detention. This hearing is continued from a previous meeting, not last meeting, but the meeting before, correct?
Recuse myself.
Did you recuse?
From February 27th,
February 27th. No,
March 10th.
thank you. Appreciate that.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Be better.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commission, members of the Commission. R.D. Lu, Fuller Engineering for 11 Glen Hollow.
Yeah, I just want to push the microphone down just a little bit. So okay, there you go.
Thank you. From our last presentation here, February 27, we resubmitted a set of plans, and the changes that we made to that since the last submittal was the actual location of this 12-inch pipe along the neighbor's property, and the revision of the existing, the 4-inch pipe that's from here and then goes to the back of the barn, which was proposed to be redirected to this 12-inch pipe. And from that, we received Scott's comment last Monday asking for the calculation of the flow going into this 12-inch pipe. So I made a
Thank you.
Based on Scott's comment, I made a quick analysis calculation for this area here. And based on this shaded area, which is approximately what goes into this 12-inch pipe, the flow going in will be 4.37 CFS. And this 12-inch pipe, based on the slope from the GIS, this pipe goes under the driveway of the neighbor and goes into open channel from here along this swale. And then it goes again to a concrete culvert into the catch basin along Glen Hollow Drive in this part. I believe Scott mentioned to include this area all the way up to here for the calculation. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, I was looking for, what you're adding to that pipe, and then what is in it already, and then what the capacity is. So
Okay,
the
so
only number missing, it's a big change, and usually I get the support information too, the input data.
Yeah, this is just a quick.
Which I assume you have, okay. So, it's usually the three numbers.
Yeah, so from here, the pipe of this, the capacity of the 12-inch pipe from this point into the open channel will be assumed slope of 10% based on the grading of the GIS. It has a capacity of 14.7, and with this area that will be directed to here, it only is 4.37 CFS. So I believe this pipe can handle, if we redirect this flow into this 12-inch pipe.
Scott, I have a
Artie, can
question.
you show on your other plan where the inlet grate, the yard drain is, just so they know?
We're proposing to put a yard drain here to collect the water, and this currently is a swale that when it rains, water flows. So it will be collected here with a deep sump so that the water that goes into here to the 12-inch pipe will be at least purely water. Right now, this pipe has a small open channel, and then this berm, a row of trees. So basically, the water that goes in here right now is just this very small portion along this area that flows into this open channel. No water from this area currently flows here because of this berm.
And so what are you proposing with that channel on the adjacent property?
Yeah, we're proposing to put a pipe from here, redirect this water here, and go into this pipe. The outlet of this pipe will be into the open channel, and then
And it's piped, it's piped from the,
because right now there's a 4-inch pipe from here and discharges to the back of this barn, and sheet flows and contributes to this the catch basin here that overflows into the driveway. And during last meeting, it was suggested to redirect and bring it here, since from
Right.
from Scott's map, this area before originally drained into here.
yeah, but the section that it's discharging to right now is open, and then there's a pipe. So the section, so the new connection is going to discharge at the property line to an open ditch.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And then there's a short distance, and then that's gonna go into an existing pipe.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And in that ditch, are you proposing to reinforce that, or?
Yeah, like put some riprap stones to make it, because right now it's just like a
So
soil
this,
with
right, so the CFS going into the pipe is a little over 4. Is that the same that's going to be coming out into that open ditch? In other words, have you analyzed the discharge point as to what you need for erosion scour protection? Based on the CFS coming out of that pipe into an open ditch before it gets into a pipe, so that you're not creating more scour, but that you're actually using an engineered method of avoiding
riprap.
scour.
Yeah, right now we don't have that, but we will be providing, because that's part of Scott's comment, to give the detail of the connection and the open channel there for the riprap.
Scott, is there, I mean, I know you don't have the calculations, but is there a chance that something else has to happen based on CFS going in to what might be coming out, where there could be still scour issues, or like, is that gonna have to be widened out?
Well, one of the things I asked about was the obvious easement that's needed from the neighbor, and he's gonna go into there's a second pipe that they're gonna propose as well. But so they need to get easements from the neighbor to connect. And even in this case, their pipe is ending at the property line, but it's a direct connection to, addition to the pipe that's there. Typically, in a situation like that, someone that has a front lawn and it's developed like that, they would want a catch basin, a structured connection, so that there isn't an open channel. I mean, having an open channel that's only like 6 feet long isn't,
It's almost like adding a pipe to just connect the whole
it's
thing.
just a hole in your yard. you
Just to
know?
connect the whole thing, right? Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
well, so a lot of times what they'll do is they'll build a structure there, a catch basin, and then make the connection there, so it's safe, no one's gonna fall in it, and it's.
And there won't be erosion
There's
issues.
no erosion, things like that. So I was expecting to see a catch basin connection at that point. It's not to say you can't have an open swale. I would say that if they get the information from the neighbor, and the neighbor prefers an open swale, then I would work with them to get just get the design data to show that the swale is adequately sized. But there's still some more information needed to back up his numbers and just to get a better feel for, what kind of flows are going in that pipe. Although the numbers that he's projecting here are so far apart that it sounds like it's going to be very doable.
Mhm.
And the other comment from Scott also is regarding this pipe that will be connected to this existing catch basin along Glen Hollow Drive. So the details for this connection will also be submitted to Scott once we have that one.
I have another question. The invert that is in the proposed yard drain is 527.3. Is that set at the existing bottom of that swale?
The invert of this 8-inch, yeah, that's the current.
527.3, that's currently the bottom of that existing swale that you're
Yeah,
catching?
that's
In other words,
the-
you're not going lower?
No, that's the invert of the existing 4-inch pipe here also.
Okay. Hmm. So with the, I know that you were here, I think with the, may have been the very first public hearing that we had on this.
Yeah.
There was at least one neighbor that had concerns about how much water's been observed. And is this, and I know we had talked about it at the last meeting, with the berm and kind of having a connection like this. Is this, in your opinion, going to address that excess water, the flows that people have been seeing, I guess, in the neighborhood?
The neighbor, this neighbor, the number 23 Glen Hollow, is the one that is will have the most benefit from this one. The second hearing we had, there was a neighbor from way down, 3 houses down.
Okay.
And actually, we are not providing any water through to him. And actually, in one also, the occasion where it rained, our client took a video of the water that's coming from his driveway. It goes to the catch basin, the first catch basin here. Unfortunately, it doesn't play, it's in his phone, but it doesn't play in the computer. And from the water from and goes into this catch basin here, and that neighbor, I think number 33, way down here, has no water from up these two properties because there's also another catch basin, this one, before it goes to his driveway. So technically, the water is not from the upper properties.
Okay.
I have no questions.
Sounds better than it was before, with all that water flowing through, so.
Scott, are there many of your comments that have not been addressed by the new application? The new-
Well, there's a number of my comments that have not been addressed, but they, at this point, the comments remaining are really about the drainage system on the abutters property. And it's more engineering, public works stuff. It's not really wetlands.
Mhm.
And it's stuff that I could just get verification after you approve it. there's, just to go quickly, oh, there's one thing I just wanted to add on those last minute comments were that an approval, if you grant it, should be contingent on them providing verification of the procurement of a public works permit to connect to the catch basin prior to the pre-construction. So the couple of things that I was still concerned about was the, in the front of this garage, where am I back here? There still is not a heck of a lot of room here. When there's doors in the front of the garage, when the vehicle pulls out, this configuration of driveway here isn't enough to back out and then make a sweeping turn. The vehicle would come more down in this area. So I don't know if you're willing to take this piece of driveway, if you move this driveway so that it comes down and connects over here instead of where you're connecting it, it would work better, because then, and I don't know if you're gonna put any vehicles in there, because the kind of door that's in there, I think, I'm not sure, but I think it's just, you could ask them, but I think they're just using it as man doors to get in there. You're not looking to put vehicles in there, I'm not sure. If vehicles are gonna go into the garage, then this piece of the driveway should be over here more, so that the truck or the vehicle can pull out and then go this way without doing like a several point turn. Or worse than that, what I'm concerned about is the way the driveway is right here, the vehicle has to back into this lawn area here, which is gonna kind of make a mess and some erosion and that kind of thing. So my suggestion would be either to propose a little bit of a turnaround up here, or move the driveway so that it connects a little bit down here instead of up in there. That way it would function a little better. There's, let me just get the other part of this out while you're coming up. The other thing is the comment about the grade differential is a little bit, I mean, this garage is just sitting in a hole. And when I look at this, I just get a little concerned because there's a good slope going down into the garage. And, you know, it just seems to me that if you're gonna do this work now's the time to address that. Unless you wanna leave it that way, I don't know.
Yeah, that part we addressed, we will be changing the, yeah, it will be regraded. The maximum will be 8.7%, and then at this side it will be a little over 4.
So if you're regrading that area, you know, you really should show the proposed grade so we can see what's going on. And then what are you putting it into an inlet or something where that pipe cuts across there?
This is the existing grade, and from that to this elevation is 8.7. So because the asphalt here that is currently this Bitconk apron was temporarily placed, and yes, from this point to here is quite a steep drop, but we will be removing the Bitconk apron, and so this will now gradually go back to the 530 elevation here, which will reduce the slope.
Okay, so it's gonna drain around the north side of the garage. Is that what you're saying?
This side, or
I mean, typically, if you're gonna do something like that, you'd show us on the plan, like, where's it draining to? I'm assuming it's draining to the northeast corner of the garage area, right?
what will be the ground? You mean will be?
Yeah, like, the driveway, where's it gonna pitch to?
There's a trench drain here in front of the
All right,
garage, and then it's piped to this.
So you're gonna cut out that steep, that abrupt drop off.
Yeah, and then
Make it a
taper
little
it.
bit more uniform, but it's still gonna pitch toward the front of the garage, but you
Correct.
have a trench grate, which is gonna collect that water and bring it into that pipe that goes
Correct.
over the catch basin.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just, I guess, if you guys are okay with it, I could work with them to show it on the plan, so we have a record of it.
Yeah.
I don't think he has a choice. The way the whole thing is graded in front of that garage, I mean,
I know.
no matter what he does, it's gonna go to the right.
Yeah. So those were the only ones that needed to be, the rest of them are all housekeeping, calculation, drainage calculations.
Plantings.
You know, that's assuming you guys have, you're okay with the plantings and all the rest of it.
Just have a question going back to that yard drain. You could stay on that page. Just go, yeah, right to that. In terms of the logistics of installing it, and if there's a rain event and that swale is flowing water, what method of construction are you proposing for installation there to avoid, water coming down the swale and getting into your excavation?
During construction or?
Yeah, during construction. And, or, if it's gonna be a day or 2 days to install that, I don't know.
Maximum of 1 day. He says it's about half day, then drop it in.
Hmm. Would it be a trench, pipe, and backfill, or would it be trench, stockpile, a windrow, install the pipe, and then backfill everything?
Good evening, my name is Jim, owner of the 11 and now. Now, because to dig a trench, wrap in the fiber in the bottom, put gravel, put the pipe between the gravel, cover the pipe with gravel, put the fiber in the top, backfill.
Right, but section by section, or open the entire trench?
It's small space. To dig down, it's gonna take like an hour to dig down. So down is gonna be half a day job.
Perforated pipe?
Solid pipe.
So why would you backfill it with gravel?
Because if any water come to the trench, you can go in and
Follow
drain
the
the
pipe.
below, follow the pipe.
I was there and there was snow everywhere, so the
No,
only thing I saw was, heavy bleed of water right behind the garage, coming up out of the ground. So-
Now everything is dry. Last night rain, just got water from yesterday. Before we have no water, everything is dry. You can walk in the wetlands if you want, we have no water. Everything is dry.
So you feel pretty confident this is
Yes.
gonna collect that water?
Yes, because just I got water when it rains. If not rains, I have no water in my yard. No water. Because just a small portions come for the slope, that's it, but it's very, very small. Almost nothing. If you got 3 days of good weather, no water.
My suggestion is that the purpose of this is to catch the bleed and the flow coming off of there onto the neighbor's property. This is down a ways away from the wetland. So I would suggest that if you're gonna dig a trench, you're gonna put crushed stone in it, I would suggest you put a perforated pipe.
I do
in,
too,
because
bring
it's
the
gonna-
gravel right up to the
Yeah, it's
surface.
gonna grab more of that.
Yes, I can do that.
Overflow runoff.
Yeah, surface water and everything.
Yeah, I can do that, no problem.
Bring the excess soil. How deep is it gonna go?
Probably gonna be like, I don't know the calculation. Like 16 inches, 18 inches.
right there, yeah, 18-inch deep channel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not 18 inches.
It's only about 6 feet, so.
524 is the invert, so it's not deep at all. Matter of fact, I don't know, it looks like 527, there's a 526, so it's about 2 feet deep
2 feet.
on this end.
So I guess if you bring if he brings the gravel right to the surface, and then right to the ends of the pipe, how is that gravel gonna stay above the slope? Or are we talking maybe some type of storm drain or something, where the concrete top will keep the gravel, back on flatter ground?
I'm not following you. I'm gonna work with them to put, my suggestion would be to put a shallow catch basin in.
That would solve the problem that you're talking about.
All right, so I guess it'll be below the mouth of the pipe, or it's gonna come into the box, the side
It's
of the
gonna go
box?
into a catch basin, and then the existing pipe's gonna go out the basin. That would be my suggestion. Or if the property owner doesn't want that, then, and the approval will be contingent on getting that easement to do that. So if you can't get that easement, then unfortunately, you're taking the risk, you're gonna be back here again, going to the commission. But I'm assuming you've been talking with the neighbor?
Yes, I already talked to the neighbor. I got a mail from him for today, and he's been confused. I think I don't need the letter for today to give it for the
Okay.
commission, and I can give tomorrow. I can drop to you, and I can give it to you personal, because you want to sign. And this call, you say, oh, I'm going to try to call my wife because I'm in a meeting. I don't have access to the computer to sign the letter. He sent it to me. So we try to call the wife, but his wife is not home. So no way I can bring the letter today. I can do nothing, but he's agreed everything. So already explained everything to him. So I can drop tomorrow, Friday, the letter.
So if there's a contingency in there, and you don't get the letter, then there,
In the back?
yeah. But he sounds like he can bring it, so that's a good thing. I just came up with a question, I don't know how pertinent it is, but if you're going to dig this 18-inch or 2-foot trench and fill the hole with gravel and pipe, what are you gonna do with the extra material you're taking out?
What I'm going to do, I'm going to take away.
Okay.
I'm going to.
So you're not gonna fill, the
No, I'm
concept
gonna-
is to
no,
not
no,
to
no.
do any filling?
No way, no way.
Okay.
Does anybody have anything else?
I'm good.
Scott, anything else?
Bond recommendation's $11,000, and Donna can read the exhibits.
Okay, so we left off at exhibit 21, which was an email from Scott Schatzline to Mr. Artie Blue. That was March 25th, 2019. Exhibit 22 was email correspondence regarding a time extension to the next meeting by Artie Blue. That was on March 27th. Exhibit 23 was a 10-sheet plan set, proposed housing remediation plan by Fuller Engineering. The document was dated July 2nd, 2018. The revision date was April 3rd, 2019. Exhibit 24 was received April 8th, and it was updated town engineer comments by Scott Schatzline. The document was dated January 23rd, 2019. Revision date April 8th, 2019. And Exhibit 25 was a quick calculations map for the inlet pipe by Artie Wood. And that's it.
Thank you. All right, this is a public hearing, so is there anybody here tonight that would like to speak in favor of this application?
Anybody here that would like to speak in opposition to this application? Anybody here like to make a comment of a general nature in regards to this application? Seeing none. Anything else from the commission? Anything else from the applicant? Okay, so it's your position that you want to close this hearing today?
Yes.
Okay, hearing's closed.
Thank you.
Gavel. Thank you. All right, that's it for our, just talking
You got- Just got here, Jim.
I forgot about Jim.
That is it
Jim's
for
taking a nap
our
on the
regular activities. Moving on to enforcement, notice of violation discussion, IWV 2018-16, 781 Main Street. Unpermitted use within 100, within up with the video, Town Line Auto Body. It says Town Line Body, but I'm assuming that's Town Line Auto Body, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Before Ray starts, I just give you a real quick summary in terms of, 781 was a notice of, you did an administrative review, a notice of violation went out, but the applicant or the owner, when they came in and they indicated to the commission that they understood and acknowledged that they were going to be submitting a submission for remediation to the commission. And so you established a timeline for that. They're past the timeline at this point, but also on your agenda later on is a time extension that they're asking for to continue on and prepare for that submission. But what has happened since is that Ray has come in and talked with us, with the staff, and they vacation on what the expectations are for that submission to the commission before they spend the time and expense to actually put it together. So with that, I'll let.
Before you start, just so the record will reflect that Commissioner Story is rejoining the meeting at 7:39. Thank you.
Chairman, members of the commission, Raymond Rizzio, representing the Piadamis at Town Line Auto Body, 7181 Main Street. We've been retained by them to help them work through some of the issues, and they're actually, it's interesting, we had a great meeting with Scott and Will Agresti yesterday, because although it's one dovetails into the other as far as resolving the issues, it's still zoned residential, it's pre-existing non-conforming use, the thing's been there 40 years, it's expanded, it's condensed, it's grown, it's, you know, they've done what they can, they try to keep the property in pretty good shape, they've cleaned it up a lot, and it kind of, some of the things we do to help solve the wetlands issues are also related to zoning, so we plan on cleaning the whole property up. We're going to turn, because technically they have the ability for outside storage, but it's in the wrong area. For example, under their historic approval, they have the ability to have outside storage on the northern portion of their property, but in the northern portion of the property, they also have what they want to put in a septic that's failed, so they're going to put in a new septic, and the reserve, they have to pump up to a reserve area. They also had some old storage containers that have been back there for like over 20 years. Any filling that's gone on, it's outside the wetland line, or certainly, as we determined yesterday in the office, happened before 1984. So they've flagged the wetlands. There's no, certainly since 1984, there's been no filling of any wetlands. They had some encroachments to the southern part of the property. So our goal really was to get rid of all the encroaching sheds, pavement, things like that, which was near a stream. Get them to get a compliant septic system, which I think started to drive some of this when their septic system failed, and they came in to give a new septic system, and they had this survey that showed all these encroachments and stuff that had no record of. So the encroaching matter are these storage bins, which the alternative would be we're entitled to store them, would be to put them up in the front of the property. What we would like to do is change the zone to commercial, which would allow outside storage over the entire property. We would then be able to fence in these storage bins and create a buffer from the wetlands on top of having a whole planting plan that will buffer, enhance this area in the rear, even though it'll be blocked by this fenced-in area, because outdoor storage has to be fenced in the commercial area. We could make these compliant, but then we would be able to move them up to the street, which nobody really wants to put the storage containers on the street. They have a growing business. The business, you wouldn't even know these storage containers are here except from an aerial. We'd like to keep them back there. We'd like to fence them in. They don't create there's no kind of drainage or anything going off into the wetlands, but we feel with a planting plan that would toe the slope, not in the wetlands, clean up their violations to the south, and then change the zone. We can bring basically the property into full conformity, provide barriers for the wetlands, give you landscaping that hasn't been there for 40 years, but make something more compliant with today's standards and what we'd expect. And doing that in conjunction with both Scott through the wetlands, which we talked through yesterday, and Will would like to see this, the zoning would like to see this, I think, become commercial. I don't think anybody's ever going to build a single-family house at this site. We think we can bring the property to total compliance. And that's kind of why we're here. I apologize for not bringing the, what do you call it, drive. But I thought this was kind of informal, and I didn't realize I would need to do that. So these guys have run a good, successful business. They're good, compliant people. The minute they found out they had a violation, they rushed in. Once they realized they were in a little over the head, and there was multiple issues, not only the wetlands, but that if they had some help on the zoning, we could help clean things up. We got involved, met with staff, and hope to have, within the next 30 days or so, a plan to staff that would show how we would dress this up, contain it, protect any future encroachment on any wetlands, and then create a barrier which would ensure that. And if we can get all that accomplished, I think you know, as the town's trying to bring all of these older non-conforming properties more into the 2019 standards, I think we can accomplish a lot. And that's kind of where we are. I would like to say it's a mea culpa, but they really didn't know they were doing anything wrong. They didn't think they filled any wetlands. I don't think they really realized where their boundaries were until they had this survey come out, which was done when they, because to the south is a utility, either the phone company or the utility company. One of the utility companies owns the property to the south, and there's nothing there. So they haven't had any neighbors. They've just kind of worked this property for the last 40 years. The surveyor came out and said, geez, you got these sheds. The sheds have already been removed. The encroachments have been removed. So they're looking to be compliant. They want to work with the town. They want to stay in town and keep running the good business that they've been running. And I think if we could get another 30 days or so to submit a plan to staff, get their feedback, and then probably get on your agenda. I think Scott said we should file for a permit to do the plantings and putting the fence in the regulated area. In the meantime, we'll also file for the zone change. We can bring this property where certainly there's going to be a paper trail, because you go through the records and it's like the Wild West a little bit. But we'll certainly, we've got now a foundation for everybody to move forward, and then we'll have a set of rules for everybody to follow.
What he's describing would be an application for development that would have remediation as a part of it. So that's, I guess it's
Just looking for a blessing?
bit of a general appointment, because he's asking if that is, conceptually, is that along the lines of something that you see as a direction to go in, and then if it is, then he's going to put together the application to do that, and then you guys just need to decide what kind of deadline you're going to put on it. If not, then keep talking.
I'll go back out and get my tie, so at least if I'm on YouTube,
Only your back.
getting beat up, don't worry.
And it's very grainy.
Scott, I got a question, Scott. They're redoing their septic, right? Are they gonna do an environmental testing on the old septic? Because it's a body shop, and most of the body shops do a lot of painting and
Ray
a lot
could
of
probably
chemicals.
answer that more from a legal end, but my understanding is that the only thing that will kick that in is if someone's doing refinancing.
Yeah. This is something they've owned for years. Typically what happens, they have what's called the Transfer Act in the state of Connecticut. So if you got certain properties Mr. Shamus is an expert on this more than me, but if I get out of my league, just stop me, because I normally, you would make that kind of presentation. But we would have to file under a transfer act if you have like a dry cleaner, a body shop, things like that. You have to register with the state. You have to basically go through certain testings. If it's not being, property's not being transferred, or if it's not being financed, then all of the septic stuff just goes through the health department, and that's kind of the way it's handled. Is that accurate, Jeff?
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Yeah, if there's no lender involved.
Yeah, and they've owned this for, I think it's going on over 40 years. I mean, they've been in business for.
That's not to say that you couldn't require or request testing, it's just that they don't have to based on what the process is.
So there's no outside force that's asking for it, but we could ask for it if you wanted it. Is
Yeah.
that, am I reading you right?
That's, I'm just,
Am I-
that's
Yeah.
not, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, typically, the state, what happens is if you don't file and you transfer the property, then you have like strict liability going forward. So there's always a negotiation between buyer and sellers, or banks say, hey, look, you know, we want this thing cleaned up. So it doesn't mean that there's an issue. It just means these type of uses, they want them registered and they want them watched whenever they go from, through a transaction, basically. You'll have a dry cleaner in the middle of a shopping center that they couldn't create any kind of hazardous waste, but the fact that it's a dry contained shopping center, they end up having to go through the transfer.
mhm.
I'm assuming this application, if it were an application for remediation and development, would also include remediation of the encroachment to the south?
Yes, we're already doing that.
And
They've already
planting plan
removed.
and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Remove sheds, plantings, do the whole thing. They're actually, it was nice, it's one of the few clients that I have that come in when they get a violation, says, how do we fix it? And instead of how do we get out of it? So they've been, and Scott will tell you, they've been very cooperative. But now we have a game plan, and also getting the zoning correct allows for the outside storage versus taking this storage and throwing it up on the street where it was previously approved back in the 70s, I think.
So do we have to wait for a zone change first?
Yeah, Scott, what's logistically, how does that work out? So
No,
we're
you can-
considering,
You can process it. We had suggested that simultaneously they look for the zone change. And obviously, whenever you approve in a commercial, well, pretty much an area, but mostly commercial, the applicant is not allowed to proceed until they get all of the permits. So they have to get the zoning permits before they have a pre-construction and are allowed to move forward with anything. If they don't get that, or if they go to planning and zoning changes it, either by, in this case, by the variance, the ZBA, or planning and zoning, if anything is changed to any degree that would change things for you, then it has to come back. That's the risk that they take.
I think, along the lines of what Clark was saying, the understanding of, is there existing trench drains, floor drains, things like that that are in use, I mean, all those things are probably gonna be asked about. Because if there are, and, they're not, they're connected to the storm drain system, those kinds of things.
We're submitting ourselves to your jurisdiction, and you want the answers that you would normally be entitled to, and we're 100% okay with that. We have an engineer on board, he'll take a look at that, he'll put a plan together, show you where everything goes and how it's handled, so that, yeah, you're great, we give you these no offense, and some nice plantings, but we're flushing everything out of the wetlands. I got it.
Okay.
So are we just doing an application extension then or something, or?
No,
there's a
so
time extension, but
I'm just-
but
what
we're
is
doing
it
that.
that you want to see? It's like when a violation comes before you and you determine what kind of submission. So you're looking for just a
Oh, okay.
remediation submission, or you're looking for site
Well,
development and remediation?
Yeah, you've already been down that road, and you already made that
Just
determination.
clarifying, yeah.
This is just informal, he just wants clarification.
I think that what you said made sense to me.
Yeah, we're fine, I'm fine with that, I'm just.
It's
Okay.
it's
Is it
hard to
really
believe it's
not
April
developing?
15th. I would ask if we could have to June 1st to file something, we'll get to them, and then Scott,
That's the time extension.
would that be okay? I mean, or 30 days.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can safely speak for the commission where, you know, they've been in here twice before, now they engaged an attorney to come in here again. I can't imagine that we'll have a problem giving them another 60 days, right, or whatever that 45
The
days,
second, the
whatever
first
you're
meeting
asking.
in June, so that gives them what?
The first meeting in
60 days?
June, whatever that date is, I can't imagine that's an issue. Does anybody have an issue with that?
No.
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 But we're on it. You know, the quicker they get this cleaned up, the quicker they get their zoning. If they want to build, they have talks about building an addition and things like that until they get that zoning cleared up. And this is all part of it.
Just so it's clear in my mind, though, again, what Scott said, so we're looking at stuff, you're gonna come in with this plan, and then if zoning does not change, all that goes away and we start from scratch. Is that what happens?
No.
Well, no, in this case, because it's an existing non-conforming property. So I'm not exactly sure what happens.
I got a much better argument with zoning to tell them, we're leaving them where they are, whether you like them or not, because technically, once you have something there for more than 7 years, this is their 20 years, they really can't force you to move anything.
Well, except for in our regard, they're a couple feet from a wetland.
You're different, that's
Right,
so.
okay, I just wanna make sure I have a good
What
understanding.
we have to do with you, to me, is paramount. The way we go about it, by getting the zone change, allows us to make everything more compliant. So in other words, even if zoning says, well, that's really, you're storing stuff there, it's not really a setback issue, it's a use issue, they say, okay, we'll take them all and put them on the street. Where they have a historic approval to have storage on the front of, basically, this whole area up here is a storage area. So.
And 25 is
Route 25 is
going that way.
So this
So
is
that's the
north.
area where there's cars now, right?
Yeah, but what they've tried to do is,
Yeah, I get it.
you got it, so.
Yeah.
You will be taken care of. Zoning makes sense, and it's a different fight. You guys, taking care of you folks is a priority that has to be addressed.
Is there anything else that you guys think that they should be taking a look at right now, as we're moving in?
So for clarification, we're looking at, the first meeting in June is June 12th. So in the letter, I'll probably send you, it'll state that we'd like a submission then by June 5th.
Perfect.
Is that okay?
No problem. And I apologize for getting being longer than I thought. I just thought giving you the global understanding of what's going on would help. Okay, we will have that, done
So
before.
then it would be on the June 12th meeting.
Come back with my disc.
Chris knows, just ask Chris.
Thank you, sir.
All right, folks,
Appreciate you coming in.
thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
Take care.
Have a nice evening.
You too. All right, there is no application hearing determinations. Moving on to other, IWC 2016-04A1, 34 Enterprise Drive, All-Star Transportation, request for bond release.
Good evening,
Good
members
evening,
of the
sir. How are
commission.
you?
I'm John Kimball. I live at 1428 Monroe Turnpike. John Dufour, I'm here representing John Dufour because he couldn't make it to the meeting. And we also, we also did the work on the site, so it kind of makes sense for us to deal with this. I apologize for
What was that?
Rubber bands.
I thought it was a bug. I'm
I
like,
think that something busted off of,
I'm either
Shot all the way down
hallucinating
there?
or a bug just flew right by my face. Sorry, sir. Go ahead.
get it in the eye, Jim. It must have went right under your
Not
nose.
even late yet.
All right.
So I apologize for not
Sorry
being
about that.
here at earlier meetings. I just, I was away for the last meeting and we just, communication, I wasn't aware that, that we were on the agenda. So what we're trying to do, do you know, Scott, if Conrad was able to get out to the site or not, look at the sill fence?
We both got out to the site, and the sill fence is confirmed
gone.
that it's.
All right. Okay, so there's, I guess, a couple of outstanding issues, or, a couple of things out there. But what I'm trying to get to is sort of the difference between the bond and other potential issues. Because right now, we've got two bonds, one with wetlands and one with planning and zoning. The wetland bond, I don't know if you have copies of the bond, but I've got copies of the bond form. So, basically the items that were bonded for were sedimentation, erosion control, silt fence, hay bales, topsoil seeding, fertilizing, those kinds of things, landscaping for restoration, and grading for site restoration. So previously, one of the things that was on this, because it was still, the ground was still frozen when I sent this back to the town, is that I needed still to remove the silt fence and I needed the ground to thaw, but as long as the ground thawed, I'd get the silt fence out. So, so in our estimation relative to the bond and bonding, the things that were bonded for, we feel that the site's stabilized, there's grass growing everywhere. We planted every tree, bush, grass species that was required to be planted on the site. The Phragmites were removed from the basin from the forebay, because that's where we had them. There is some confusion, because in Conrad's inspection, he mentions plugs that needed to be put into the bottom of the basin, and we did a revision for this project from a wet basin to a dry basin. And when we did the revision from the wet basin to the dry basin, that landscape plan was modified, and the wetland plugs were obviously taken out of the basin because it's a dry basin. So all that was required in the bottom of the basin was a wetland mix. And then the other thing is the plantings. So I think part of what might be happening is, and we asked them to furnish us a copy of the plan that they were, the title block from the plan that they were using for the review, because there might be just a miscommunication, because all of our plantings were taken out of the basin and put up into the shoulders around the edges of the basin as part of the modification. So, we're trying not to beat a dead horse on this. I do have some pictures, because, and I don't know, I've never done one of these before, so I don't know if they.
Left side?
Left side.
Should be.
So, open to view files. Okay. So just because sometimes pictures make it easier to, but let me see. This, sorry, this was the, I just brought a, where's the bigger, right here. So this was the modification of the plan where the red of the modified pieces, and we took the darker pieces out of the plan in terms of in the redesign. So, that was just to touch on that. How do I go back, Scott? Is there a back
Just,
button?
yeah, I'll do it.
Huh?
I'll do it for you.
Thank you.
You can hit this, where'd the arrow go?
Sorry.
I don't know where the arrow went.
What arrow?
There's usually an arrow in the upper left hand up here to go back. All right, so
Scroll to the, it says scroll up.
it's, no, he's only got one picture.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we'll just go back to
So
the
you-
file.
You had it, when you went up,
Down.
where'd you go, to the top?
Right? We're both using the thing at the
Scroll
same time.
Okay, there you go. Oh, my God.
Sorry,
Right.
I should have brought my son in for this
There you
part
go.
of the technical part. So, I brought some other pictures, this is just, I wish I could just have it do a slideshow, but, let me see.
Well, you would have had to combine then before you,
Yeah, I know. So this is just to give you an idea of what the site looks like, you know, the riprap, the forebay, the riprap outlet into the basin, you know, all of this is grassed and stabilized.
If you go down
If you
to
just
the
hit the
bottom,
area, the arrow down there.
there's an arrow, keep
The
going.
blue
right
arrow,
there.
There you go.
Okay, perfect. So this is just a little bit to the right of, you know, just showing a little bit more. This is hard to see, but this part here is dry. There's a little ponding in the corner, because I know Scott's had concerns that there wasn't enough stormwater storage in the basin, because it was retaining water, but the as-built elevation of the basin is 408, which is what the design elevation of the basin was. So it's very hard, because the whole thing was designed basically flat, and it's very hard not to get some puddling in a completely flat basin. You know, if we had a, you know, some kind of percentage grade in the basin, we could have pushed the water around, but you know, it's just not that situation. So this is the outlet structure, and in terms of plan confusion, this was one of the things that got very complicated. What happened is, when we revised the plan, Solar Engineering put a detail that basically said there were 2 bricks on this. The detail said to remove, to add this 3rd brick, you know, lift the top off, add the 3rd brick, and had an elevation here of like 41106. And then but then when we got the as-built, the elevation here wasn't 41106, it was 411.8. So it was roughly 9 inches higher than what their plan had originally detailed. So, so going off of this, we ended up with a basin at 413.6, which then was supposed to be at 412.81, again, 9.5 inches higher. So what should have happened was we should have removed, instead of adding this brick, we should have removed that brick, because then we would be 9 inches down. And then we also needed to cut this out in order to get that 9 inches and to get the weir height at the right elevation. So, and these are just some more pictures of the glorious structure that I got from Solar Engineering. This is again showing the basin in its dry condition. It's not completely dry again. There's a little puddle back in this corner. And I did want to point out that, you know, this was graded and seeded. We had obviously the wettest fall ever, and this thing had a lot of water in it in the fall, and the grass just died off, and you know, but stuff will come back. But the All-Star bus people had to call the police because they also had kids doing donuts and riding inside of the basin. So the basin, and the other thing is, this is also a town-maintained basin. So the detention, or the neighbor's basin on the other side of the street, when it overflows, it comes in across the street into this basin, and this also picks up the catch basins all the way up to Pinnacle Drive. Mm-hmm. So it picks up everything uphill and comes into here. So the other problem we have also with plantings and maintaining plantings, the plantings are in, I just went, they're budding. I'm not sure, Conrad says replace dead plantings, but we're not sure, we don't have like a lot, as far as we can see, we don't have a lot of dead plantings. Things are not brittle, they're not breaking off, they seem to be functioning as, but our issue then over time will be that the town will, this is one of the few basins they do maintain, but they maintain it by brush hogging it. So everything we plant and planted will be brush, just so that the commission's aware, the town will brush hog this down and obliterate everything that we put in. It's, I'm not sure how you, I'm bringing that up to you just because it's something you may need to address either with Public Works or in some other format, so that there is more of a conscious understanding that the plantings that were put here were put there for a purpose, but that, the other issue is that they drag from one basin to another basin to another basin, and if something has invasives, they're dragging from one basin to another basin to another basin throughout the town. So let me just keep going. This is the berm that we built so that the water has a longer flow path from the All-Star parking lot. Things seem to be functioning pretty well. The forebay seems to be holding the right amount of water. It seems to be allowing things to settle appropriately. And that's the other forebay on the other end for the town's portion of the drainage. That one slipped over on its side. So this was this morning after a rain event. The basin's full again, and whoops, I was just taking a picture of the beautiful wetland markers and the removed silt fence. This is, so what I did is I went out and removed the 2 blocks, dropped the top down, and used a concrete chainsaw to cut the weir out. And so we'll provide Scott with a verification that meets the elevations of the design, because the engineers did another 135-page report on how the other design was just as good, and I said, look, that's not what I asked you to do. What I asked you to do was compare what was built to what was approved and show me the discrepancy so I could fix it and make it the right way out in the field. And so that's what we did is we went out in the field and made it as it was approved. So, because before, you would have noticed this basin top was up here above the berm. So it would not have functioned in any capacity. So the appropriate way, the other one did work, but this one works and is as it was approved. And this shows sideways. This shows already this afternoon that basin that was already full, it was full of water, the water's already receding, and it's starting to go back to a dry basin condition. So, it's no basin, nothing in the world is exactly perfect, but we feel, we've met the intent of the design and what we're delivered. So, and that's just, again, a picture of this thing above the top of the berm, So, I think that's it. I think I've gotten through the different plans. I don't know if anybody's got any.
So you're here asking for the release of the remainder of the bond, correct?
Yes, please.
Okay, so, and we had already once reduced your $40,000 bond to a $10,000 bond, which we still hold.
Yes.
Okay. So, I remember this, because I remember, wasn't this the basin that we had originally approved some amphibian barriers around, and then you came back and we modified to take the amphibian barrier out?
Yes, sir.
And put in some plantings, correct?
Yes.
All right. I didn't see a ton of plantings there. So every planting that we had approved on that
every plant, bush, and shrub that you approved was installed.
Okay, do we have a copy of what was approved, the planting plan, or whatever, the plants that were approved?
I do, I've got the approved plan, I've got the amended approved plan, and I have a sketch showing what is there.
Okay, what, the
In
amended?
addition, I have some clarification I need to give you about this.
All right.
There's some confusion. John, I'm gonna kind of go out of this. if
Okay,
that's
so this was the planting,
Yeah,
Just minimize. Just right
that's
there.
interesting, we can go back to that. Well, I'm gonna,
Just minimize.
oh, see, he's got all, I don't know.
That's all.
All right. Let's see, which to do first? The first thing, I want to talk about is the drainage, because there's a lot of, after hearing what John was just talking about, I could see there's a lot of confusion about that. The basin, he's correct when he says the bottom of the basin is the same elevation as the originally approved basin. The problem I have with this is that originally the basin had stormwater quality in it. So it had a 9-inch differential between the bottom of the basin and the V-notch. And that differential was supposed to be the volume that the water quality collected in. Then they came along and they decided that there were issues with the barrier, amphibian barrier, and the wet planting process, and they decided that, well, let's abandon that. And so what they did was, they put in a stormwater quality mechanical unit in their drainage system. So that eliminated the need for the water quality volume that was below the V-notch. So that's a good thing. So they provided this mechanical unit to take the place of that. However, their drainage calculations include that 9 inches below the V-notch in their attenuation calculations. So in other words, when you are detaining the runoff in a detention basin, there's a certain amount of volume that's detained, and it directly relates to the outlet control structure, in this case the V-notch, the small little 6x8 orifice, and the larger 4 by whatever orifice, but in this case it's designed as a spillway because the water, by the way, you didn't have to lower the grate because it's irrelevant. The grate is just a cover on the thing so no one falls in it. The water never gets up to the grate, it's just there. So the grate was a foot higher, who cares? I never cared about that. The spillway, the orifice above the V-notch, he's correct, was put in, 0.8 feet higher than it was supposed to. So I asked their engineer to, look, run the calculation. It may not have to be touched. Maybe it holds the same amount of detention as the old one. You gotta run it again. Just plug in the new numbers into the older formula. However, there's two concerns I have. One is, if you look at, let's take today's pictures. Let's see. Hold on. Thought these were, all right. So if you take these, let's go to, all right, go to this one. You'll see that the pond, the basin is at the, here it looks like it's at the V-notch. And their design says it's 9 inches lower than the V-notch. So when I go through the stage storage calculations that they solely engineering, they start out at what is it, something 08, 608 is it, or is it 408? They start out at the elevation, which is 9 inches below the V-notch. Well, either either the ground is there, which you see right here, or there's water there too, because we have pictures of, a number of pictures through a period of time that shows that there's water in the basin. Now, when this was approved, the idea, the understanding was that they submitted a test hole information that showed that the water, the redoxamorphic features were a minimum of 2 feet below the bottom of the basin. And that was provided in their professional information that came to the commission when this was approved. Well, then I go out there and
To
then
justify that would be dry.
to justify that it would be dry. We go out there, and there's water in it. And I've got a couple different sets of pictures, and I'll run through them, but you'll see that one of them has, the whole pond is ice, another one has water. And so the water has been in the pond for extended periods of time. As a matter of fact, there's nothing growing in the bottom of the pond, and the reason for that is because you'll see in some of these other photos that the, oops, I'm hitting the wrong one. That there's, you can see that it's wet so much that there's black around here, and it's just mud. There's nothing growing because the water kills it all.
So you took those today?
I took these today, yeah,
Right.
sure.
So I took them at 5 o'clock, and that's dry already.
Okay, and it may drain down sometimes, but I can tell you that it doesn't drain down all the time, and during wet portions it doesn't. Regardless, it shows that
Now,
there's no 9 inches
Scott,
below.
when you go back there, and go back another
First of all, it's not,
picture, you don't, one more time, where you can see the pond and the outlet at the same time.
so
That
that,
one.
so
Do you
that
think
creep,
there's, could be 9 inches between?
there is 9 inches on the as-built between that outlet, and there's a
Okay.
little section right there where it creeps up between the pond and the bottom, that V notch, that's 7 feet long between the ponded area and the
Well,
basin.
I
The
don't
whole
want
rest
to
of the
debate
basin
here.
is at
If you just let me
408.
finish, I'm in
Go
the
ahead.
middle of my
Okay,
discussion here.
perfect.
The as-built does not show that. The as-built shows that there's a 9-inch differential, and there isn't. Unless there's something wrong out there. And there is not 9 inches of storage in their drainage, that their drainage calculations show. So the issue that I've raised is that the attenuation that's supposed to be happening out there doesn't appear to be happening. It's either not happening because there's water in the basin, and/or the grades are such that that 9-inch differential isn't there. And certainly, at the very least, this area here, this dry area, shouldn't be there, because that should be, as I showed you in this photo before, it should be 9 inches lower than that V. Their design shows 9 inches below that. That's attenuation volume. So at the very least, it's not at that point. So those are my questions to them, and they were very supportive and very responsive. Solely did, I had a lengthy conversation with Casey Birch, who did the design, and he acknowledged the fact that, it happens. The orifice up here was put in the wrong elevation. But even with the wrong elevation, he was able to show that if this bottom portion of the basin was where it was supposed to be, he was able to show that it didn't matter, that because it's on the upper part of the V-notch, he was able to show that if you run the calculations again, it did do the attenuation, so I was happy with that. So the only thing that is kind of hanging on there is this issue about the volume. So per my conversation with him, there were a couple other problems with his revised calculations that he gave me in terms of the way that he had projected it. And he agreed and said that he would make those changes. So I was in the process of waiting for him to do that. That's the problem I have with the drainage in the basin. The other I don't know if you want to see the rest of these pictures, I don't know if you want to see them or not, but we've got construction pictures that we've taken throughout the construction, and you'll see that it's been dry, and it's, you know, there's portions where it's been wet as well. This isn't it, is it?
No,
It's
no,
mine.
yours.
Oh, that's his, okay.
Why don't you click on 5 o'clock to show that it's dry already, you know? I mean, Scott, I understand, in the winter, when the ground's frozen, there might be ice in the basin and water.
And that's the exact point I'm trying to make, because that's when you need the detention basin. And if there's ice in the detention basin, it isn't gonna work.
But if
So
the ground's
my-
frozen, how do we, what do we have to put ground thawers? I mean, how do you expect that to
There's
happen in
not
any
some-
basin,
The
anywhere?
reason the reason it wouldn't happen normally is if it was as the test pit showed, there would never be water in there to freeze, because you'd have a storm. During the storm, it's warmer if it's raining. And then after the storm, within, as you just pointed out, within a couple hours, the water drains out of the basin. If the water drains out of the basin in a couple hours, there wouldn't be ice there.
So when we have 2 feet of frost in the ground in a basin, the water from a rain event's supposed to immediately melt that before ice
I'm not saying
forms?
immediately, but again,
I just
my job
disagree
is to
with your
tell the
theory.
commission if it's designed the way, if it was built the way it was designed, and in my opinion, it was not. So I'm trying to work that out with them and trying to
Yeah,
get that resolved.
But, okay, my issue is twofold. One, my engineers cost thousands of dollars performing calculations and revised calculations that you're not even happy with yet. I did the.
By the way,
I did
the town's engineer costs thousands
I
of dollars
did-
too, for
I
every
did-
time that I've reviewed
Sorry.
this, which is hours and
And-
hours
and-
and hours and hours I've reviewed
And
this.
Scott, I never asked for that. All I asked was to show this discrepancy between the two so I could repair it, which I did. So I apologize, but I'm not the one. Conrad sent an email to Solely Engineering asking them to do calculations, which I have a copy of the email that he sent because I took exception with it. And, you know, he sent an email and basically said, Kevin, please research the differences among the plans, calcs, as-built, and coordinate with the town engineer. Now, you know, that's all well and good, but when your inspector goes out and then asks my engineering firm to start doing work and coordinate with you, he's making work for you, he's making work for
Mr. Kimball, I'm gonna
me.
stop you right there, because we're going
Yeah,
off the rails
we're-
here. This doesn't,
Yeah. So-
that's not for this commission.
But, just,
I'm pretty sure I can finish here,
okay,
okay?
perfect, thank you.
So, the issue that's sitting before this commission is you want your remaining $10,000 bond back,
Right.
or the property owner does,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Okay, so the information this commission is getting is that the conditions and the plan that was submitted and approved has not yet been met. Am I understanding that correctly?
Right, here's the landscaping, by the way, and again, the bottom of the pond has no plantings in it, it's just bare dirt. Here-
That's
here-
not the revised plan, Scott.
Well, okay, this,
So that's what the issue is.
all right, okay, let's back up then.
Here's the revised plan.
Here is the approved plan, so let's see where,
So, and here's
If
my
you look-
as-built drawing that we submitted to the town showing that the condition was met, sir.
John, we're looking at photos, there's no growth grass.
Was
There's
there
no
something in the
grass.
permit conditions that said that the the plantings would be inspected after one overgrowth season
No,
or anything like that?
unfortunately, there isn't.
Didn't they come to us saying that the plants had to move out because they didn't think that anything would grow in the bottom of the pond because it was too wet? Was that a different pond?
It was probably a different pond. I think in this one, we basically said the town cuts the bottom of the basin, and we didn't want to put the plants in the bottom of the basin in this one because they go in and regularly mow it, and so there's no sense in putting the plants in and then having them mowed. The as-built plan that I just brought up to the commission shows the basin at 408. The design has the basin at 408. So we built the basin and have an as-built by a surveyor licensed that shows it at 408. to Scott's point on the storm storage, if the basin continued to hold water, then it might not have adequate storm storage. But it was designed to be built at 408, and the weir was designed to be built at 408.86, which the weir is at 408.86, and the basin's at 408. So we did exactly what was designed, exactly what was approved by the commission, what was reviewed by both Scott and our engineers, and signed off on. Now, at 5 o'clock tonight, I have a picture showing that basin already drying up. So the storm storage that the town needs to get stormwater quality is at 408, and the 9 inches that he's talking about is available for storm water quality. So what I'm asking for is to, for the commission to basically return the bond based on the fact that there's two bonds still outstanding here for $10,000, and the recommendation that was made to the Planning and Zoning Commission was not to return any of it. So we have $40,000 bonds still standing out there for the same issues, because basically what they did is they took this bond. On the back of the sheet, you'll see the Planning and Zoning bond is basically the other half of the same line items. Not to take any control away from the Wetlands Commission, but the planting plan that was revised was met, and every plant has been installed. The stormwater basin that was designed was built exactly according to the design. So we
I think the contention here is that it is.
well, that's
And
what he's
do
saying
we
is
have the
because it
revised-
holds.
Excuse me, do we have the revised planting plan that I can take a look at?
Well, maybe John can help with that, because I've got the originally approved plans, which is right, this is the revised plan. It's IWC 2016-04A1, right? And so this is the modification. So the first plan doesn't show any plantings. The second plan, it's a 3-plan set. The second one is details. This shows the V-notch. If you look here, you'll see that this shows the 9 inches below the V-notch, which isn't in the picture that I showed you. And then the third one is this. Is this the plan you're talking about? Because, and those are the 3 plans. Here it is right here. This is the modification approval. And then I've got the original approval, so maybe, is there one missing?
Well, maybe, I've got.
Well, I don't have the original with me, but I have it over here.
I know that we submitted this to both Planning and Zoning and the Wetlands Commission. I have the memo. This was the.
Here's the approval right here. So this plan shows the plantings. So Conrad and I went through the file. Inland Wetlands has this modification plan, has the original plan, and the original plan shows the plantings. So I'm wondering, John, if the plan you
This
have.
is 8/15/17, it's the same date of the plans that you
Right,
have.
I'm wondering if, I think, I'm gonna guess.
Somebody's
What's
not
happening
working
here
off
is,
the right set of plans.
well, I'm guessing that what's happened here is they did a revised plan, it went to P and Z, never came back to wetlands. That's what I think happened, because this plan does not, show me the plan that has the inland wetlands approval stamp on it. There isn't
Scott, I
one,
don't have one here.
because I don't think it went to wetlands. And so,
Did we send an approval letter after the amendment,
you
or
did.
whatever?
There's an approval letter for the amendment. and
Did I see that?
I don't. All right, let me see if I can-
The plan, I have the transmittal letter, and the transmittal was sent to you and Will.
That doesn't mean that it's applicable to wetlands.
Ah, okay.
Because I'm the town engineer and I'm involved in planning and zoning. Unless you submitted this plan to the Inland Wetlands Commission, then maybe it's missing or
This is
something.
the amendment approval.
Let me see. what's the date on this is 6/15.
And here's the original approval.
And this plan is, okay, this is really weird. The plan that's referenced in the approval letter, the modification approval letter, is dated the same as this plan that John has. And it's got the same date on it, but it's a different, so wait a minute, this is 2/21. Oh, okay, so it's not in the set. That's what the problem is. Now, let's see if it's referenced on here. It is referenced on here, 2/21. So it's not in the approval set for some reason. So that's where the discrepancy is. So I can correct that. I can go back and I can get this plan, and, you know, for some reason, what happens is after the letter gets done, we get final plans that get signed and then they get stamped. This set got stamped, it doesn't have the plan in it. Now, I don't know whether it wasn't included in the set that came to us or not, but I mean, I pull out the plans that have the stamp and I go through it.
So
I'm not trying to,
So there's an honest miscommunication. I'd like to say that we will
all right, so that
come
can be
back
resolved.
after we have a chance to sit down with Scott face-to-face and
Now-
work through the plan sets and get things
And
straightened
the
out.
other thing I'm trying to resolve is just one more conversation probably with Casey Birch. I'm working on trying to resolve the drainage calculations so that we both feel comfortable with them. And my notes here that I went over this, I talked with him about it, we both had an agreement that he was gonna do these final things to clarify and to address my concerns about that. And I was waiting to hear from him. And as soon as I heard from him, I was gonna process and see where we were with the bond. And that's how it works. I mean, I can't tell you that things are done until they show me that things are done. And I know that for someone like John, it's a little clearer because he doesn't get into the weeds, excuse the pun, like I would with the engineer when it looks like there's a discrepancy. And I don't say that lightly because I don't get involved with that unless I have to, because otherwise, you know, he's right. Who wants to spend money on something that doesn't need to be spent? But in order to answer the questions, I gotta have someone look at that so they can provide me with information. And that's what's going on here. That's what I'm trying to do.
So you didn't get the correspondence from Casey Birch yet?
No, I'm waiting for that.
But
I
that's
spoke with
So
him
that
on,
would be your proof?
spoke with him on March 27th. And said he was going to go back to this and do what he had to do.
But that's on a revision to the plan to make it not the approved plan. And instead of having Scott spin his wheels and waste his time on that, I felt it was more appropriate to just deliver the approved plan out in the field. So surveyor, you know, as-built the basin, and then he doesn't have to go through any more calculation. I didn't feel it was Scott's job to go through and do a lot of extra calculations. I didn't want him to spend his time doing it, you know, to your point.
Well, I don't want to do it.
No, I know you, there should be no reason. I should be able to deliver you what was approved, and
Yeah, and when
out
I
in
get
the
the
field.
as-built and I look at it and it lines, and John has been through a number of other projects where that's happened. I mean, I get the as-built, I have the drainage calculations, and that's why we get that information, because I look at the elevations, I look at the as-built, hey, everything lines up, beautiful,
Okay,
and I sign
okay,
off.
so let's say he does the as-built, everything's as we think it's designed, you still got the bottom problem.
You still have the bottom problem, yeah.
Well, I mean,
And
it's a
also-
matter of, is there still 2 feet of separation between redoxamorphic features and the bottom?
Well, what I'm seeing.
The longer water gets out there, stays out there, the more likely that there will become
More water.
features. Well, redoxamorphic features
And
being
And
created.
the reason I put a
Can I
higher,
keep this?
Yes, ma'am.
the reason I put a higher level of concern on this one is because I know that when this got approved, it was really a big topic, whether or not there was water in it, because you guys didn't want water because it would be a decoy basin. And they actually went to the trouble of putting an amphibian barrier around it because you didn't want the amphibians. Now, when I went out there today, there were peepers in the pond, and there were frogs in the pond. So there's stuff in there. I mean, naturally there would be without the barrier. So it is, I'm just trying to do my job. My job is to tell you what I see, and this is what I see, and then ultimately it's your job to decide. I mean, if you decided that, well, you know what, there's a little water in the basin, and we're just gonna live with that, that's fine, then go ahead and do that. I don't vote, you guys vote, you make the decision. All my job is to tell you what I see and put the facts on the table. And that's what I'm trying to do.
I mean, maybe before the next meeting, I assume we're not gonna do anything today, you guys can look at the pond and agree with how long it takes for it to dry out to a reasonable extent after a regular rainstorm.
Well, one of the other things I'm gonna try to get a little bit of clarification on too is why is the 9 inches not underneath the V-notch? Is it just because there's a little berm in front of the, when you stand there, it doesn't look like there's that it's 9 inches higher.
Does that mean that the whole bottom
but
of the
that's-
pond is 9 inches higher than it should be, or just the area in
No.
front of the notch?
Well, that's an answer that needs to.
That's what he's
come.
asking.
That's one of the things. that
Because
needs to
that
happen.
does change a large.
Because sometimes it's deceiving too.
lot.
Sometimes you could be standing
Yeah.
there and you look at something and you say, damn, that is higher than the other thing. But then you take the shots with the instruments and you say, boy,
But it's not.
it's not, you know, it's like, wow, it really looks like it.
It's literally, I mean, you can see from Scott's picture, this is 5 o'clock today, it does evaporate relatively quickly, so, and that's just, because I know it's important to have the storm storage, and that's what you're looking for, and this is surveyed in that as-built at 408, which is that's that 9 inches, so the 9 inches is available for the storm. So, and I don't know where your,
So I'm getting there. It's just a matter of, I think we just have to close in on it. And I was waiting for him to call me back, and I'm working on it. You know, sometimes it takes a little longer.
All right, well, let's get that hammered out, and let's get that correct stamped plan on the file, right?
Right.
Because that's what we need. And
Yeah,
while we're taking a look
I
at it,
did
let's
stamp
take a look
it
at
and
what
marked
plants
it.
are supposed to be there.
all right.
Just out of
Right.
curiosity, did Casey call you to let you know that the town is asking for more information, and is it okay to go ahead and
Yeah,
do the
that's
additional
usually what
calculations?
No.
As a consultant, that's the first thing as you go to the client. And I'm only saying that because if the town is asking, not you or not the owner, but asking the consultant, I'm just kind of standing up for these guys as staff, that they're going to the technical source, but that technical source has a responsibility to go
Oh,
back.
no, and
So-
I totally agree, that if he worked on it, it's on his nickel, not, because he didn't call, all I asked him to do, first of all, what Kevin told me, which is what I reiterated back to the town, was, we took the as-built and brought it in for an approval, so what's out in the field is what's supposed to be approved. Obviously not correct, because when I saw the as-built and I compared it to the approval, after I'd asked them for 2 months to give me that comparison, I did it myself. I sat in the diner today doing the calculations, realized I'm 9.5 inches off. I went and got a concrete chainsaw and fixed it. So Scott doesn't need to deal with the calculations anymore with Casey, because I made all I have to do is give him an as-built showing that it matches. Now,
Well, we gotta get,
You're
what we have to do
doing-
is get
you're
some
doing-
clarification on the as-built on the bottom of the pond. too.
yeah,
But-
and which is on the as-built, but what we don't have, Scott, to your point, is spot shots every 15 feet. So you can see from your picture that shows the pond full of water, that the water stops at, 10 feet, 15 feet away from the basin. So it basically ramps up right in that one little section. We can, so that would be, 10 by 3 to get to the notch. I'm not sure whether it's better for us to dig it out and leave it 9 inches below or not dig it out. It's 30 square feet out of 43,000 square feet of basin bottom, so I don't think it's, from an engineering standpoint, that it's mission critical. That little section that goes up to the V-notch, and right now it's already vegetated, so I'd, assume leave it alone, but I will dig it out if it is mission critical, so, but the whole rest of the basin, based on our stamped, certified, as-built plan, is at 408. So that dirt that you're seeing there is at 408. Now, is the little ponded area maybe a hair less? Again, it depends on where they spot shot, This isn't a super flat floor. Like, even if you do concrete pouring, and you're doing this thing in concrete, and then you pour water on it, you're gonna have puddles that end up on a concrete floor. If you did parking lot, the reason that we pave with a pitch and you want a 1% grade on paving is because if you try and pave flatter than 1%, you get puddles. We're trying to grade topsoil flat. It's impossible not to end up with some kind of ponding, so, flat probably wasn't the best design, but I didn't design it, I just had to build it. So we'll work with Scott and try and.
If the main goal is dry basin versus wet basin, so that it's not a decoy vernal pool, and if the species are already using it, I have seen dry basins where they put in under drains to ensure that it's dry, so that water that's in there gets out.
Yeah, and actually, in this situation, they can do that because it's not a water quality basin. If it's a water quality basin, in order to qualify to be a water quality basin, it has to be filtration into the ground. But in this situation, if the basin is wet and it needs to be dry, they could put it, as long as it's not a under drain that, the concern there is if the under drain works too well, then it starts messing with the detention as well. But there's ways to address that too, but I don't know if
I
it's
think you
gonna
guys just
come
need
to
to
that, yeah.
talk more and
So,
get technical.
but the one thing that was also, another thing that was also concerning me was that, I'm assuming you want the bottom of the basin to have grass, right? That it's not dirt, just mud. And the fact that it's mud is what is telling me, you're in that field more than I am. If there's no grass growing there, and there's black mud and black leaves around the edge, that tells me that there's water in that basin more than there isn't. That there's water in there enough of a time to be longer periods of time. And that's why I brought this issue up, because you can see the blackness around the edge of the
aren't there
water.
plants that gonna,
Well, if it were a dry basin,
well, I mean,
they'd
when you have an
see it
inch
and it
of, when you
would
have an
grow
inch
grass.
of water in there, in or on or off, it's gonna, something's gonna end up growing in there, right?
So I would
I
think
go to Lake
something.
Zor and it's 6 feet deep and there's stuff growing in there, so.
Well, eventually hydrophytic vegetation will grow
Yeah.
through the water that's in there if it's a wet basin. Well, in this case, you do care if it's wet, as I said, because you don't want it to be a decoy. There are basins that he builds that turn out to be wet, that were supposed to be dry, that I don't really care because they're not a decoy basin, and the attenuation works. There's a couple that were overdug. They're overdug, and that's actually a good thing, because it'll catch sediment and stuff. So that's what I look at, because it's not always what you think it is. You have to look at the drainage calculations, and you have to see, well, what's going on in this pond? Where does the storage start for the storm that you're routing through it? And you compare that and do that whole thing.
So the question is, from a bond standpoint, if we put every plant, every tree, everything, and built the basin exactly as designed, do we not get our bond back because the basin you know, I mean, what's the contractor's responsibility here? To certify the performance of the basin ongoing for, like, you know, if we built a basin to 408, we had a plan to build it to 408, we put all the trees in, we did all the stuff we were supposed to do, is the where does our end come here? And what's the next step? I mean,
Well,
you know.
I might be on a different plane here, but I think the contention is it's not built as it was designed.
But based on what? Because you've got a survey right there in front of you that shows that it was built as designed, and there's a comparative survey.
Design, but it may not be functioning as designed.
Well, the other thing too is the design included a test pit that showed that there was no water issues higher than 2 feet below the bottom of the basin. And that's turned out to be not correct.
Including monitoring and, you know, I mean.
Well, there's another
they've
thing
got
too,
test
like,
logs for it.
there's another thing that would come up is say, okay, so let's say we had a basin elsewhere in town where they did a test pit and there was no water at all. I mean, it was dry. And the basin had water in it. And it's like, why does a basin have water in it, you know? And so in that situation, we found out that it was contaminated. Not environmentally contaminated, but it got contaminated with silt material, and it plugged it up, and it wasn't draining out. So there are other reasons, there could be other reasons. I don't know if that's the case here, but, and that does happen to basins too over time, and that's why we don't particularly love basins that rely on filtration to drain out to totally dry, because what happens is over time, you come back maybe 10 years later on this basin, and it'll be wetter. Because what happens is, as stuff grows in there, you get eutrophication and stuff in there, and it falls to the bottom.
When you
get
put
a
topsoil in it,
Yeah, you get an organic
it starts
layer.
putting a layer of, a barrier layer on the bottom of the basin, just by introducing the topsoil. That basin is sitting on a pile of sand and gravel. I'd love to dig it out and sell it for septic
Well,
systems. I mean.
But to me, if that pond's got an inch an hour of perk, I mean, it's gonna dry out in
Yeah, but
9 hours. And if it dries out in nine hours, I mean, to me, that's fine.
Well, it
Right?
is, but we've definitely confirmed that it's much longer than 9 hours. Now, is that in the winter time or what? But there's water, I mean, there's, you can see by the fact that there's no grass, if it rained out in 9 hours, there'd be grass there.
Well, how long has the basin been operating?
Since 2017.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, but like
I thought it was even
today,
longer than
No,
you
that.
know.
wasn't that one of the original ones that was
Yeah,
put
that's
on when the whole
longer.
park
Oh,
was
yeah,
built?
this thing's been
And
there
then it was
forever, but we
redone.
It's
we
different basin.
Right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that-
reworked
And it
it.
had grass before?
Yeah.
It had
Here's
trees
one
in
thing
it
I was
before.
looking at.
What?
If you look at the wetlands that are over here, the elevation of those wetlands.
Yeah.
And if you look at the elevation of the wetlands that are over here, and you
Yeah.
draw a straight line between the two, it's at the bottom of the basin. So that's another tip-off that this wetland is much higher than this wetland. You draw a line, so what's happening is the groundwater goes down as it goes to the other wetland in that area. And so, I don't know, and this is one of the things that I always ask for test pit information, and it's always a task to get more information about that. So I'm always telling people, when you do your test pits for the septic and all that, you gotta give us more information about these test pits for
So
your
you're
storm.
thinking that it's the groundwater elevation is the pond?
I think the groundwater's
Wow.
fluctuating, and it's my theory.
I mean, what if you dug a little hole there?
Yeah, but
I mean,
so I guess
I
that's
don't
back to
know.
my that's back to my other question. So what's the responsibility? So say the wetland water
Say, is it
level.
groundwater? I don't know
Well,
what the answer is. I
say-
mean, I
say
just
it's
want to
groundwater.
decide.
My
Well,
take
part
on
of
that
it is if the test pit
It was-
information was inaccurate, and they gave you, it really wasn't 2 feet below that, and we're finding that because, you know, the as-built shows that it was where it's supposed to be, but if you did another test pit, the redox features are gonna show shallower. I mean, that's no one's fault other than whoever investigated that they found something different if you go back to that location. I mean, that's where the water would be, and that's what we would have to go, and Scott would go by to make decisions on, okay, it looks like you have the clearance. But if that turns out not to be the case, to Jim's point about functioning, if it's not functioning the way it should be, and that's the question, I guess, that's been raised, is it functioning the way it should be?
Well, I mean, you see by 5 o'clock, it's, you know, the thing's emptying out. So the question is, I mean, it rained last night. Scott's got a picture this morning of the basin full of water, and by 5 o'clock, I've got a picture of it with water already drained out of it. So it seems to be functioning the way it was designed. You know, is there a,
Well, I can
are
tell you
there
that
puddles?
we've been there days after it's rained, and there's water, you know,
At what time of the year?
not frost winter, but, you know,
Winter, fall, that we had a record rainfall this fall. Every 3 days it rained. You have water coming out of your parking lot. You have waters coming out of everything.
and
So,
that's when you get a 100-year storm. You don't get a 100-year storm in a drought.
Okay, let me ask a question. Say the storm, that the basin is not performing as it's supposed to. What's the worst thing that can happen if we do nothing to it?
Well, and that's where you guys come in, because I'm not
But just answer the
accepting
question.
it. No, well, let me
answer the
just
question.
explain. I'm not accepting this. You are eventually, so that's a good question in that, let's say it doesn't, that could be answered by, reach, and he can tell me what year storm it will attenuate to. Because what it does is it takes away a little bit of the volume. So instead
All right,
of,
so say
instead of
it fills up.
attenuating up to
Where's
a
it go?
100-year storm, it attenuates up to an 80-year storm.
All right.
Or,
okay.
you know, whatever, you
See,
know.
I see John's point, I see your point. We would like to have a functioning basin. And we're disappointed that either A, the test hole information was incorrect, or there weren't enough test holes dug, whatever it was, we approved it. And
Based
if-
on the information.
based on the information we were given. And,
But he did his job. He
he did,
finished his job.
if
should
it
be-
is indeed
He should be
at the
getting his
elevation
bond
we
back.
approved, and if it is indeed, fits all the other criteria that we approved, technically,
We released
we're
the
done.
bond, yeah.
but I understand what you're saying, we all want a functioning basin, and we want it to be able to attenuate everything it's supposed to attenuate. So it's if you look at it as a black and white matter, to me, there's no question. But it doesn't make me happy about it. But I don't know how anybody
Yeah.
else feels about it.
I think they ought to get together, work through it for the next, till the next meeting, and then we talk about it next meeting if
Yeah, I
there's
think-
any,
I
if
think
there's
the
any
issue we're
remaining
having-
issues.
There's definitely some issues that can be clarified.
There's definitely issues to be clarified, but the issue that we're having is the 9 inches that Scott's talking about is 9 inches of water sitting above this dry ground. That's the 9 inches of attenuation that he is claiming that we don't have. So we're doing calculations to justify 9 inches of water in that basin that sits right there, right now. That's what he's saying. That's the difference between the ground and the V-notch. So that ground is at 408, the V-notch is at 408.86. That's the 9 inches, and he's basically saying there's water, which there's not. That's dry ground in that basin occupying that 9 inches. That's the engineering disagreement that we're having. If it's like disagreeing on whether we're looking at the color white or black, you know, and I'm saying it's white and he's saying it's black. There's not 9 inches of water there. So what calculation would I do to prove that
No,
there's
you would
9
just-
inches
no,
of
you
water
would-
there?
You would just, it's gonna rain this weekend, and you.
It rained
no, I
last
think-
night. We had water
listen.
in the basin last
Yeah,
night.
Listen, I can work this out. This is the process. I am working it out. I'm in the process of getting it resolved. But there's a few things that have to be answered, okay? And I think they can answer those. We can resolve that.
But
I'm-
Scott, I understand, but what you're asking us to answer is based on an assumption that 9 inches of water is sitting in that basin. It's clearly not. I have an as-built showing the elevation of that basin built at the same elevation that it was approved at. So why am I spending time and money and effort, and why are we boring this commission with a discussion of 9 inches of water that doesn't exist?
It sounds like it comes down to the V-notch was supposed to be here,
It's there.
but now it's here because it's at the level of the basin. Or it's at the level of the basin where that hump of something is, right? Before it gets a little bit lower to the rest of the basin.
The V-notch was within 5/8 of an inch of where it was supposed to be. It needed to be
I'll
5.
I'll tell you what I think the problem is, because there was water in the basin. I get the as-built, I'm looking at the as-built, there's clearly a lot of water in the basin. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Today, when I went out there wasn't as much water in the basin, because a period of time had gone by and it had drained out more than the previous time the pictures that I had. When I went out there and I walked over to the outlet structure, I saw in that picture that I showed you that it was dry between the two. So I think what went on was that was underwater before. The water was up to that. And so I saw all this water, and I'm saying, why is there water in the basin if it's supposed to be 0.9 foot, or let's just say 9 inches below the V-notch? Well, today I realized that there's a possibility, there's a berm in front of, it's built up in front of I mean, clearly the V-notch is touching the ground. It's supposed
Can't
to
we
be
just
9.
dig out that berm? I mean, that
That's
10
right.
feet
So
by however
what
much
might
it
be
is?
happening is that when they did the as-built, they didn't do detail over near the outlet. They went around the basin, they showed the bottom of the basin is this elevation. Well, they didn't show that there's a high area in front of the basin. And so that's holding back the water.
Mhm.
Or, that's what I'm trying to get to the bottom of. So if I could discuss it with them, get to a comfort level, and I could provide you with more information.
Do you have to get a whole nother engineering study?
No, not necessarily, no.
Okay.
And that's, obviously, I want to avoid that. My goal isn't to spend people's money, or even if it's free for him, I don't want to spend people's time and effort and resources. And I've been doing this for many years. I have enough diplomacy and professionalism to know that I'm not going to go out and spend people's money for no reason. So I'm sure I'm going to work with them and try to find a solution the least expensive way possible. So the first thing is just to check a couple grades in there to figure out why things don't jive. And that's where I am. I just haven't gotten to that point, and this preempted it. That's the problem. Normally, I'd rather have this conversation in the office and work it out before it gets to you guys, so we don't have to spend an hour and a half or whatever it is going back over this, because we just gotta go back to the office and get it done anyway.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, let's do that then.
And I
Mr.
hate to
Kimball,
do
this
this,
is
but
your
there's
ad.
one last question too, is I'm assuming, what's your opinion on the plantings that are around the basin? Because we went out, we confirmed that many of the plantings were there, but there are dead plantings. I mean, they're brittle, they crunch right off. There's other ones that have buds on them and things like that. I think that John is pretty much correct when he says that the town is gonna go out every
We've seen
3,
it.
4
We've
years
seen it.
and
I
brush
agree.
hog the thing.
Mhm.
It has it has other growth around the banks. So are you guys okay with the fact, I mean, clearly the deer have been eating them too. So are you guys okay with what's there?
It's hard for me to tell what's there and what's not at this point.
Yeah, I
Not
mean,
green
there's,
enough yet anyway, it still doesn't.
I mean, there's a bunch of plantings they put in, they were
Most of what they
3-foot
put in
high
is still
plantings.
alive?
It's a stick, it's the size of a pencil, no branches, it's just one thing that
Would you
comes
say
up.
80% is surviving?
Yeah, I think so. I think a good portion is surviving. I think they will survive with time. There's a whole bunch of them that don't have buds on them, but the stem is green. So
I
they're
mean-
there, they're just getting eaten.
I'm okay with that.
Well, that's the other
I
thing.
think it'll take care of itself with time too.
All right, so I'm gonna focus more on the drainage stuff.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, John.
So now we will deliberate on 11 Glen Hollow Drive. How would we like to direct our staff? Oh, wait, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm gonna leave again.
Does he have to recuse for,
That's a.
for
No,
deliberation?
I was abstaining.
We're not, I mean, we're gonna, go ahead, Lois.
I
I'll hear you.
move that we direct staff to,
Well, we're not moving,
No.
right?
No,
not
right now
moving.
we're,
I would like to
Just in
see a
11
draft of approval with conditions.
Okay.
oh, sorry.
So, I think we as a commission can say that we want to ask our staff to draft a level of approval with conditions. Let's start with, what conditions? Scott, you wanna
Let's go
do
through
that?
his comments,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so
Nice to see you.
You're doing a fine job.
So I'll review the report that was submitted and just make sure that those recommendations are, it's requested that those are in there. So I'll put recommendations from soils or wetland report is one suggestion. Then under the survey, we've got that well, I don't know, this is kind of a mood issue at this point, because there was still storage equipment and that was on the south side of the garage that they did not show on the survey. It's kind of a mood issue at this point. So I'll leave that out, I guess. I had an item on here that the driveway turnaround should be enlarged or the layout revised to provide for adequate turning radius. I'm gonna change that to provide the grading, the proposed grading to show that that drop-off isn't gonna be there. Okay, and under drainage, I'm gonna keep in all of those comments, suggest keeping all those comments about the calculations. That's J 1 through 4.
John, the little white arrow next to the flag where you just were. Sorry. That. Hit it. And then,
Down,
Oh, sorry.
right there.
Thank you.
Has anybody ever had a
You can
stick
close it
drive
all out.
damaged by pulling it out?
listen, it tells you gotta do it, you gotta do it.
Close
I
it.
You
know,
can't just
I
not
always-
hit the button and pull it out.
I
You're
always
crazy.
wondered that,
Taking a
like-
risk.
I've done it, I've never had one.
Yeah, I've never had a problem. Okay, so J 1 through 4.
Here, John, let me,
And then 8, under details, the item that I had, those all would stay in the plan of profiles of the proposed piping, the detailed alterations, the addition of existing piping, that's E, F, and G would all stay in.
Okay, you're all set.
And
No,
H,
it's no problem.
yeah, okay, H, I, and J would also be things that I would put in your draft letter. Number 10, verification of procurement, certainly of the drainage easement from the abutter, we're gonna need to have that before the pre-construction. And then provide verification of procurement of the public works permit, street opening permit would be something else. And then the $11,000 bond. Is there anything you want me to add to that?
Well, you were gonna work with them, I don't know whether this needs to be in the letter or not, concerning a catch basin or a riprap or something that would connect their
That's already,
property with
that's
the
in
neighbor.
there.
That's in there already?
It's one of my
Okay.
comments.
The trench filled with gravel and a perforated pipe, did you say
Oh,
that?
yeah, the trench.
Yeah.
That's kind of, hold on a second, let's see. Detail of alterations on the abutting property should be provided, oh, that's plans. Maybe it isn't, hold on. Detailed grading, proposed riprap, and dimensions should be provided for the proposed open channel connection to the drainage system on the abutting property. Or conversely, catch basin.
Right. I also have the details of the second connection with the neighbor's catch basin.
The second connection I've got,
Is that on there too?
that's on there under,
I didn't go into your technical comments very deeply.
the additional existing piping and other details should be provided for the existing drainage, oh, that's not it. A detail of alterations to the existing catch basin on the abutting property should be provided. Plug existing outlet, remove riprap splash area, connect pipe, etc. And I'll describe, where
Okay.
that is, so it's a little bit more
Alrighty.
understood.
The material for the trench should be removed from the property and not spread on the
Okay,
property,
right. Materials
As offered.
from,
as offered.
I just thought of another one.
And that's all I have.
Another one was the suggestion that he make that upper pipe a perforated pipe.
Yeah, that's what Russ was saying.
All right, so where did I put that? Hold on. To be a perforated.
That's all I
Okay.
have. That's all I
Anything
have.
else?
Nope, that's it.
All right, so I'll put something together and have it out to you for consideration at the next meeting. Sound good?
Excellent, thank you.
All right.
Commissioner Stewart, come on back. Record will reflect Mr. Stewart's rejoining at 9:12. IWC 2019-05, 5 Bridge Road, single-family home with associated site improvements. Bridge LLC, Kimball. As we all recall, in our last meeting, we've asked our staff to draft a letter of approval. We've all had the opportunity to read such approval letter, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we have a 6-page approval letter, and the first page is listing the application information. It lists the submission information, drawings and submission information. The second page, voting, goes on to the items that are to be done within 270 days, section A, 1A through I. I'm assuming you've read through all of those and agree that that's what you guys had said.
I didn't get any.
Okay, and then number 2, the standard comment about filing. Section B, timing and expiration is all standard in, I'm assuming you read through it though, it's all the same from all the other letters. That's page 3. Page 4 goes on to section C, conditions to be addressed prior to construction. It lists the $11,000 bond, and it has, the rest of the items are, I believe, are standard items that are in all the letters, about the pre-construction meeting and the notice of decision. Section D, conditions be addressed prior to issuance of certificate of occupancy. Those are all standard comments that you want in all your letters. Item E, same thing, with conditions be addressed prior to bond, release of bond. And item F is your standard requirements that go in all the letters, including the monitoring reports by landscape architect or wetlands biologist, et cetera. And then the bottom of that, page 5, is the statements, clarifications, and standards, and it continues on to page 6. That's it.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion on such application.
Just a minute. I had only one, and it's a typo, and it's at the page 3 of 6, number H. We had, the plantings were lined up in solder. It's supposed to be soldier course.
Oh.
That's it, otherwise it's
I
great.
think you meant solder there.
Okay.
It's a solder course.
Oh,
IER, yeah.
I just looked at it and said, what's wrong with that?
Okay, is that it, though?
That's it.
All right. Someone make a motion, please.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Stewart, second by Commissioner Spence. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention?
Aye.
Motion passes
No.
unanimously. Did you miss a Bridge Road?
okay, Stuart, you,
I wasn't here last time.
okay.
You guys closed the meeting last.
And I'm
Okay.
sorry, who
Yeah.
abstained?
Jeff.
Jeff.
Okay,
Motion passes.
sorry about that. I got confused.
IWC 2019-06, 269 Purdy Hill Road, 25-unit age-restricting housing with associated improvements and conversion of existing building on property to a two-bedroom home. Burr Corner, Beaver Brook LLC, Quambly. As you recall, at our last meeting, we also asked our staff to draft a letter of approval. We've all received such a letter and had the opportunity to review it, correct? Okay.
Okay, so this was a 7-page draft, and the first page, application information, all the references to the submission data. Second page, continuation of that, listing also the reasons, the findings for the approval. Page 3 goes on to the records of voting, section A, which lists the items that need to be addressed in order for that initial 270 days, which is items 1A through G, 2, 3A through E, and 4, on to page 4. Section B, timing, expiration, and transfer of approvals is your standard language, items 1 through 3. Items, next section is C, which is conditions to be addressed in order to, prior to construction. Those are your standard comments with the addition of a $20,000 bond as item number 3. Those are items number 1 through 9, by the way. Then section D, conditions to be addressed prior to issuance of certificate of occupancy, items 1 through 3. Those are all standard. Section E, conditions to be addressed prior to release of bond. Those are all standard 1 through 4. And then section F, which is standard requirements on all the letters, which is items 1 through 10. Then it goes on to list the standards, conditions, and procedural requirements in the end of all the letters, and it ends on page 7.
Thank you.
Move to approve as drafted.
I second.
Motion by Commissioner Spence, a second by, who was it? Clerk. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention?
Abstain.
Okay, motion passes with 1 abstention. There's no bond release reduction report. Time extensions, IWV 2018-16, 781 Main.
unpermitted use within 100, whatever, town line auto body. We've already discussed that.
Yep,
We're all in favor, correct?
Correct.
So I'll hear a motion on it.
yes, please.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We got a motion to approve the time extension by Commissioner Shamlis. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Spence. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Time is extended as requested. IWC 2018-06, 45 Pepper, Monroe Recycling and Aggregates, request for a 90-day extension to fulfill condition A of the issued approval. Where are we with this one? Anybody know?
Yeah, what is condition A?
That's the filing of
That's-
the maps.
Yeah.
They need
No.
90 days?
All the revisions that have to be done.
Right.
Oh,
Is that an issue?
Well, they didn't do it yet. What is an issue is that, if you recall, there was a violation on the property, and you asked that the equipment be removed, and they haven't removed it.
Can we
If that
offer them a
reason-
90-day extension?
What's that?
Does that affect the extension time?
Well, it could. It could affect the extension time.
Sorry.
I don't know what to tell you.
I'm dying.
As you know, the extensions are pretty much thought of as happening. They're pretty much almost as of right,
yeah.
with the exception of
Violations.
noted violations or extenuating circumstances.
So if we okay this time extension, you have to write a letter to them, correct?
Correct.
So do you want to, does the commission feel like we should okay this time extension with a caveat in the letter saying that unless those violations are going to be addressed at that 90 days, there'll be no further consideration given?
Well, how many extensions have we given them? Any?
None, and the way we write the letter, we write it so that it's not really something that you offer. It's a real fine print down below saying that, if you can't make, because we found that there were a lot of people who
Yeah.
weren't making it, remember? What you could do, they're asking for, the letter asks for a 90-day extension. You could say, we're giving you a 30-day extension, and if the equipment's not off in 30 days, you're not getting an extension.
Fine, that's what, I'm all for
That sounds
that.
good,
Let's do it.
yeah.
Can I get a motion on it?
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Stewart, can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Clark, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention?
So we're talking 30 days,
If they get a 30-day extension with the condition that they remove the equipment by the end of that 30 days and come back to the commission with another request for the other 60 days.
Perfect. All right. Scott, I believe the floor is yours, sir.
Okay, so, agent approvals, we 57 Old Newtown Road, we permit existing shed and pipe extension. 37, that was to put in a pool. The pool's not in the regulated area, but the shed and the pipe extension are in the yard area. 37 Cold Spring Road, that was the violation that they had to move the shed, so there's their agent approval to move the shed. 50 Riding Ridge Road, a deck addition and existing deck. And 58 Rygate Terrace, existing shed and install an underground propane tank. Permitted uses as of right, Department of Public Works, went out with them, we've got a failure for the culvert on Todd Drive, and they have to repair the inlet to that at the head wall, and so they're gonna just go ahead and do that. There's a sinkhole on the side of the road, so they gotta get that done right away, if they haven't done it already. And then, at some point, I'll be back to you, because it looks like we're gonna have to put in a new culvert underneath that roadway.
Okay.
So, at some point, we'll be back to you. I'm assuming you're okay with that?
Yep.
yeah.
Okay. The next one is 224 Turkey Roost Road. It's cutting a dead tree in the upland review area and updating the foundation plantings. it's all within the upland review area, and they wanted to make sure that they were doing the right thing, so.
Wow.
So, you, yeah, you agree with, I think
No plantings.
I think the person who is doing this is in the business of wetlands.
Oh, okay.
So, your jurisdictional ruling is that that's okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
upland review.
Okay,
Cutting a dead
72
tree is not a regulated
Wells Road,
activity.
replacement of a shed in kind. This one is, they literally are replacing the shed that's there with the exact shed. So I didn't see the need for an agent approval since it's the exact thing that's already there. So we're going with a permitted use as of right, is, you okay with that?
Sounds
Oh,
good.
sure, yep.
That's some excellent decision-making
So
skills.
no voting, it's just jurisdictional ruling.
Have we been,
Oh, I know, it
We
changes
haven't been
every time.
really doing it.
All right, let's just vote. If that'll make everybody happy, let's
Well, I
just vote on
don't
everything.
know.
Let's not start voting. if we
Vote
don't
about
have to.
what?
Whether or not we have.
well,
to-
you know,
Didn't we talk about this
let's try to
jurisdictional?
all note this. I think
Yeah.
that there could be a case where where someone's got an issue with what you're doing, and they want to know, well, you know, how many of them, whatever. So maybe we should just vote on them all. It's easy to do. So the
Right.
first one, 224 Turkey Roost Road, go ahead.
Move to approve permitted uses as of right.
Jurisdictional.
Sure. Well, that's
Yeah.
we are determining
Yes.
jurisdictional, and we are moving to approve that
Second.
as being a permitted use.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion by Commissioner Spence, second by Commissioner Stewart. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? So
Next
moved.
one, 72 Wells Road. Go ahead.
Move to consider that a permitted use as of right.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Spence, second by Commissioner Stewart. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you, Donna, and we'll make sure that from now on, we'll just have you vote right away. Okay, so, under enforcement, there weren't any for this meeting, so, we move on to B, administrative review and enforcement issues. 3 Lois Circle.
Got a road named
I
after you.
do.
Lois, your circle, somebody did something on it.
Filling appointments.
Okay, so, this one here, you guys may remember,
It's at the top.
this came to you as a violation.
I do remember.
You had me issue a notice of violation. The guy came before the commission, and you told him that you wanted a full-blown remediation plan submitted within X number of days, and nothing ever happened. The guy, I think there was a divorce, I think there was a foreclosure, he moved away, and the bank took it over, and the bank sold it. So now there's a new buyer that's come in. The buyer was told, to the bank's credit, that there was a violation, but that's all they were told. So we went over what the problem is. Denise has been in contact with the new owners, and so they understand that, you know, they bought this issue and they have to address it. So they are going to be coming in at the next meeting to discuss this with you as if they just got the notice of violation and they're starting fresh.
Okay.
So I just wanted to put this on tonight's meeting, just to kind of run you through it real quickly, so you didn't get blindsided at the meeting when they come in. So we issued a citation, we filed it on the land records, so this went the whole route and nothing ever happened, went to the town attorney on the land records, and now here comes a new property owner who is, an opportunity to get this done. So, these are all the things that were wrong with it.
Oh, man.
If you recall, it was a few years ago now, but there, here's that Lois, is it Lois?
So,
Didn't we walk this?
Circle, yeah.
Lois, you and I walked this together?
And so, his driveway came in here, and there's a couple of sheds in the front yard which aren't in your regulated area.
There are dogs.
There was if you see this blue line here, there was a waterway through the backyard. They piped it, and they filled in their backyard all the way back to here. All right? So now they have a green lawn backyard. It's pretty much a standard size, so that's one issue there. Then they built a bunch of sheds and chicken coops, and I don't know what just a bunch of structures in here, which is within the regulated area, both to this wetland and to this brook or channel. And this driveway came in around the back, and they had this whole thing's a hill back here that had a lot of water seeping out of it. It was a side hill wetland condition, and this all was wetlands, this whole thing. And he put in a bunch, do you remember this? He put in a bunch of under drains, and this whole slope here, he put in like about a foot of wood chips.
Yeah, there's a ton of pictures of this, isn't there?
Yeah, and then he built, I guess there was a pond of sorts here, and it got enhanced. And so the pond got built better, and then it didn't get maintained, so the pond filled in with invasives and all kinds of stuff. So there's open water in like a third of it, and the rest of it's got all invasives in it and all that stuff. So this whole wetland area has been disturbed.
It's gonna be expensive.
Very expensive. Under drains, grading, clearing, rechannels, sloping, plantings, sheds.
That's enough, that's enough for
We
tonight.
got it, we got it.
Here's a picture of it, it's so far.
Show me the chickens.
Here's the shed-like chicken things.
Okay.
There it is on the right.
I may have
All
to
right,
recuse
here's the
myself if
head
the
wall
chickens
where
are
they
gone.
piped it in their backyard. I think this is the backyard, there's the end of the pipe, there's the chicken pen there.
I bet you they got a really good deal.
Oh, yeah.
I hope so. for
It
that.
was like in the,
Easiest thing to do.
it was
is
in
take
the
out
low
chicken
mid-
coops in the shed, the
well, I
rest of it
probably
is gonna be a
shouldn't say.
nightmare.
So, anyway, I'm looking for the photos, and unfortunately, there's no photos of the real, maybe there you could start to see it,
Oh, my God.
but there's an area back here, again, it's completely disturbed. So, these pictures aren't really showing it, unfortunately.
How's the house?
What's that?
How's the house?
What do you mean, how's
Have
that?
you, discussed this with them?
Yeah.
Yes, we have, and we've kind of alluded to the fact that, it's a big nut.
Yeah.
Is it a developer or actually a family?
No, it's a, I don't know if it's a couple, but it's somebody who
Couple
bought the
flippers.
house. Was it a couple?
I don't know.
She was in contact with him, I haven't talked to her. So,
Could you also,
here's a sketch.
the square footage, I'm interested in the disturbance because this is an Army Corps violation too. This is not just local.
If it's over how many feet?
5,000 square feet.
I don't think.
Piping of the water course, linear, all of the wetlands,
So-
and any indirect as well as the direct.
So I just have to look at the size of that. How many acres?
5,000 square feet.
Oh, 5,000. 5,000.
Yeah, that's
Under,
That's only
under
an acre of an
5,000.
It's gotta be at least a half an acre, I would, if
Wow.
not
That's what
an
I'm
acre.
saying, this
That's
is not
Army
small,
Corps.
and it's
For the
not
lot
cheap.
itself, but that's like
Is
almost
that
half the
beyond
lot.
our jurisdiction then, if
No,
the Army
we,
Corps is involved?
no,
They work together.
we can still work
Okay.
on our section.
All right, so that's something else I'll
Okay.
look into, but, so they're gonna, here's some pictures of it. Now that was taken back when they did the pond, it doesn't look like that anymore.
Oh, no, please no.
But, I mean, this is the whole back area, the whole thing's been regraded. Here's where he cut into the hill, and there was all water coming down, and here's where they put in an under drain and a burn to catch the water.
Well, we have some good pictures for
He was cutting wood and piling it in the hillside. This is all the wood chips on the hillside. This is the shed. And it was pretty major.
So they built the pond?
I think the pond of sorts was there, deeper, and
Yeah, but this,
started really digging.
all right, so they're aware that there is a big issue here, and they're coming in to talk to us about it.
Yeah, so there's a notice, there's citation, and they're coming in the next week. So you guys are informed now
We are
about
now
it,
informed,
and you're
thank
not
you.
gonna get blindsided.
Right,
Okay. All right, that was it.
that's it, okay.
And you still wanna buy the house?
It's already
Yeah.
We
bought.
already bought it.
All right, so next on our agenda is the minutes of the March 27, 2018 meeting.
Move to approve with some minor changes.
All hear it?
There were some typos throughout, which will be taken care of by staff. Then on page 5 of 7, wait, before I get there, I skipped over one, sorry. Page 3 of 7, on the third paragraph, Commissioner Stewart asked if the dam authority had authority over this commission. Town engineer advised he believes they supersede the planning and zoning commission and not inland wetlands. I'm adding the "and" not inland wetlands.
Wait, Commissioner Stewart asked if the dam authority had authority over the commission town engineer.
Just put "and not IW" at the end of it.
Oh, okay.
And the next one is, there's a lack of a motion on page 5 of 7, under IWC 2019-055 Bridge Road,
04, sorry.
04.
Yeah, it was the.
Oh, I've got,
referral.
I'm the wrong one then, okay. The creation of 2 residential lots, that motion was made by Lois Spence, and Jim seconded it. And vote was unanimous. And that is it.
Anybody else have any discussion on the meetings? The minutes, I'm sorry. All those, I'll hear a motion on it.
I make a motion to.
I'm
accept-
sorry,
So she already did that.
I'm exhausted.
That's
The
okay.
motion was made, I need a second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention?
Stay.
Minutes are approved with 1 abstention. Anything from the regulation or public outreach committees?
Regulation committee. Think we should get our
We have
draft
to get
to Scott.
We have to get ourselves.
You have a draft, huh?
Huh? Yeah. Had it.
Sort of. Yeah, but
Yeah.
we're
A
still,
lot of clarifications.
yeah, we're getting
Good
there.
stuff.
Okay.
It's coming.
All right.
That's it.
I make a motion to close the meeting?
Second.
We have a
Third.
motion to adjourn.
4th,
And
9:36.
Jim seconded.
Everyone approved.
yes.
Sorry,
Jim.
All those in
Jim.
favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention?
And
Meeting's adjourned.